Wildlife has always been a huge fascination for me as a kid. I loved herpetology, I loved Animal Planet, National Geographic, Discovery, all these different types of wildlife hunting shows, exploration and research shows very much touched to me. And as a kid, I was like an animal encyclopedia. I used to look up all different types of facts about dangerous animals, venomous snakes, non-venomous snakes, some of the most, apex predators across the globe. I liked memorizing facts. I like learning about different animals, and even until this day, even though I am a YouTube channel that covers horror, I still very much am in love with wildlife, and I love reading horror that's about wildlife, aka like Peter Benchley's Jaws, about a killer great white shark. And today's going to be a different type of video. I'm going to be talking about an autobiography and memoir from a childhood hero of mine named Austin Stevens. Austin Stevens was a famous wildlife adventurer, researcher, biologist, and most importantly, herpetologist. He worked with venomous snakes, non-venomous snakes of all kinds. He was from South Africa, and he ended up getting this famous TV show on Animal Planet, Nat Geo, Discovery, called Austin Stevens' Snakemaster and Adventures, where he would go out on missions hunting dangerous animals, looking for dangerous snakes, and doing photography of them, and documenting his whole process, making it feel like an adventure and a miniature Indiana Jones movie. He definitely had the most entertaining and cinematic documentaries growing up, and he's a huge inspiration to me. Even though my life went down a different route, I didn't end up pursuing my childhood goal of having my own animal TV show where I went and hunted wildlife or went after snakes. Although I didn't get that, I still very much love wildlife, and Austin Stevens has always been a stand-up guy who I've very much loved. He's inspired me. He's a childhood hero, and even though I make different types of content and I've gone down different routes in my life, his style, his perseverance, his morals in his documentaries, that's always stuck with me, and I try to emulate it in my own form. So hopefully you guys like this different type of video. If you love wildlife, you should check out this video. If you are a fan of me and you want to know more about me and some of the things I feel and me growing up, you should definitely tune in for this video. And if you just want to find out more about Austin Stevens and kind of learn about him, this video is for you as well. So without further ado, let me go into the journey of entering the mind of Austin Stevens, the Snake Master, finally reading a book, an extensive look into the life of my hero.
Ever since I can remember, I've been interested in dangerous and exotic wildlife. For the past 10 years or so, I've earned my living from photography. Traveling from my home in southern Africa to the ends of the earth to photograph some of the rarest and deadliest creatures in the world.
The first part of Austin Stevens' memoir is actually his time when he was 19 years old and he was enlisted into the South African Army. He came from Namibia, and as a kid he talks about how he was very stubborn. He wanted to be this kind of tough guy adventurer, and he thought that by enduring the pains of life, whether it be physical, emotional, or mental, he would end up strengthening his body and preparing himself for the real world. And unfortunately what happened was, as he was in the army, he had a fascination with reptiles. He loved dealing with snakes and different lizards, so whenever there was a venomous snake or dangerous snake in his army platoon's path, out in the African bush, he would handle him, kind of talk about him with his other fellow soldiers, and they started nicknaming him the Snake Man. But unfortunately, one time he was handling a puff adder, and it ended up biting his index finger, and of course it got a few drops of venom inside of there, and he went through some of the worst pain in his life. For those of you who don't know, puff adders have something called cytotoxic venom, which destroys your blood cells and your tissue. So it's one of the most painful forms of venom. Basically, your skin and any body part touched will start to rot away. And it's described as putting your hand in a fire and not being able to take it out. And even he mentions at certain points that it's like putting your hand in a fire, having a hammer get smashed down on your palm, taken out, and then put back in, rinse and repeat. So it's a horrible, blistering, terrible pain. That is some horror genre stuff in itself, but it's the real world. These things actually exist. So unfortunately, he had to deal with the trauma of thinking that he might have his whole arm amputated, his hand, his finger. But luckily, by the grace of God, it did not happen. He ended up getting his limbs saved. But it was an eye-opening experience because it was a near-death moment dealing with a reptile, his first of many to come, unfortunately, or fortunately. But yeah, he talks a little bit also about how he thinks that when you're born, you have a certain uniqueness inside you that doesn't go away, that you always know as a kid at the end of the day what you want to be. You may not know the exact path that you want to go down. You might not know that you want to be like, let's say if you want to be an athlete, you may not know what sport you want to be an athlete in, but you have that drive to be physical, to be active, to be competitive, be in games. That mindset doesn't leave you. And those are the things that make you unique. Over time, your character changes. You might dye your hair, you might change your clothes, you might change the way you talk, change the way you think. But on the inside, you're always going to be yourself. And for me personally, I have a YouTube channel where I review horror, but at the end of the day, I always wanted to be an entertainer. I always wanted to make people laugh. I always wanted to make people smile. As a kid, I thought that I'd have my own Animal Planet TV show, and I'd be showing people different animals, informing them about it, making them laugh, making them smile, making them entertain, being the star. But instead, I ended up being a horror YouTuber. I'm a small channel, but hopefully with the grace of God, our community keeps growing, and I'm able to inform you guys about the horror genre, different books, different movies, different TV shows, and at the same time, I make it a point to entertain you guys. I always try to be comedic. I always try to be funny, because at the end of the day, I want to make as many people as I can smile and laugh. It's always been something that I used to do in school as the class clown, or even when I did public speaking for business classes, I would always throw in humor and try to entertain a bit, even during boring subjects or boring topics. So that's kind of resonated with me. I resonate with this point on internally always being the same and knowing what you want to do. For him, it took a life or death encounter to kind of emphasize that. Hopefully, I don't need that at any point or time. I'll just stick to doing what I do. But without further ado, that's the first part of his memoir.
You gotta be very careful with puff adder because it's not a snake that moves very quickly on its own body, but it can strike like greased lightning.
The book also includes information about the time that he had at a snake park. Snake park, for those of you who don't know, is where herpetologists basically handle different venomous snakes, kind of make shows for audience members, and he used to basically put his life on the line because danger is what sells tickets. A lot of the time people don't go to snake parks actually to witness the reptiles, but instead they go there just to see people basically endangering their lives. So he was always a risk taker growing up. And then you actually get to information about other encounters he's had throughout his life. And then finally, the actual making of the Snakemaster TV show. And for those of you who have not watched Austin Stevens documentaries, I recommend you do. They're very entertaining, very informational. And although you may not be a fan of documentaries, even though you may not be a fan of wildlife, I think if you watch his documentaries, they're a lot more easier to view, they're a lot more easier to be entertained, and you're going to have a good time because they're well shot, well paced, and just overall more entertaining. And I've always been a fan of the more entertaining stuff. Some of the stuff that Austin Stevens does on the show and is even highlighted throughout his memoir book is like the time that he dealt with the giant reticulated python of Borneo, which for those of you who don't know is a snake that can grow up to 30 feet long, the longest snake in the entire world, and is actually capable of eating a full-grown man. Some real horror movie villain stuff there. But unfortunately, it does happen. People have been victim to being swallowed alive by reticulated pythons, and he goes to capture one in the show.
Look at that. That's a snake that can eat a man. I don't want to get involved in that part of it. Okay? Look at him. He's really mad now. He's identified me totally as the antagonist here. Oh my.
You also have the time that he was on the islands of Komodo and he had to go after Komodo dragons. Komodo dragons are the largest monitor lizards. They can get up to 10 feet long, and he unfortunately had to get some close encounters with those.
I don't want to get too close. This is fantastic. It's so frustrating. I haven't got my camera here. I'm more worried about not having my magic stick, because I come too close and one of these guys give me a go, I'm going to have to ward him off. The only thing I can do is run for the seeds.
You also have times that he went after the king cobra, an 18-foot-long giant cobra from India, the biggest venomous snake with enough venom to kill a full-grown elephant. You have
This was the biggest venomous snake I'd ever seen. This is totally awesome. To look into the eyes of a snake like this is just fantastic. He's just watching me.
the time he went to South America to go after the Bushmaster, another huge venomous snake known as the Silent Fate. Very meticulous, very slow moving, but it can strike at rapid speed and kill you in a heartbeat.
Uh-oh, I haven't got my tongs and he's looking right at me. This is not a position you want to be in with a snake that can strike at this distance. I mean, this is a pit viper and he's got enormous pits. If you look very carefully, just as he's posed between the eye and the nose, that is his heat receptors. With that, he can detect exactly where I am. If this guy strikes out and he strikes at me, he won't miss.
And he also had times when he went after elephants in the deserts of Namibia.
Any movement attracts attention, and I'm seen as a threat. That charge was just a warning.
He went after killer hippos out in Africa. He went after grizzly bears in British Columbia, hyenas, lions, a bunch of different cool stuff. So his documentaries are very entertaining. His show is very entertaining. And I think for anybody out there, you should go give him a watch because you'll have a good time. And he's the whole reason why I was interested in wildlife. He sparked my fascination, and I hope to be just as entertaining, just as popular, and just as flamboyant as he was in his shows, because that's what I want to do at the end of the day. I just want to make entertainment that you guys can watch for many, many years and hopefully not be forgotten by the point that I'm 6 feet under. So hopefully that gives you a good insight towards his book, a good insight towards Austin Stevens without me giving too much away. I want you guys to experience some of his stuff for yourself and also give you an insight towards me and kind of how I think, why I do what I do. And hopefully you took away something positive from this video. That's all I got for today. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that post notification bell. I don't make videos usually like this ever, so I'm going to be making horror content. Go check out all my horror reviews for movies, TV shows, and books, and all the future stuff that I'll be dropping. That's all I got for today. Deuces.